yet for me.
Because it's 5 o'clock. Okay. Hey, everybody. This is Nate Norfolk with Ray's Wine and Spirits. I am the Wine and Spirits Director here at Ray's. I'm also a certified sommelier. And I've got my guest tonight is Casey Stringer from Stringer Cellars in the Napa Valley. And Casey is a native of Mequon, Wisconsin. And he's I'll call you a bon vivant. He's a world traveler and has made wine, at this point on a few different continents throughout California and pursued his studies in New Zealand. We're going to taste 3 wines with him. I'm going to touch base too about a few upcoming events on April. Oh boy, I got to think about this one. So sorry, everybody. Oh my God. On April 10th? Yeah, April 10th. I'm going to do, like I call it values and variety, class and tasting on the kind of indigenous red grapes of Piedmont, Barbera, Dolcetto, and Nebbiolo. And then on April 24th, we're going to do an event very similar to this where Teresa Heredia, who is the winemaker for Gary Farrell, will taste her Russian River Valley selection Chardonnay and their Russian River Valley selection Pinot Noir from the 2018 vintage. It'll be a format just like this. And so if folks tonight, if you want to buy any of these wines that you try, I put a discount on them, and they'll be available to be picked up this coming Wednesday. So if you go through our website to buy them, just note that you won't be able to pick them up until Wednesday. So and it'll be obvious when you try to buy the wines. It'll say that on the website. So just pick a date on Wednesday or later. The Sauvignon Blanc is going to be $18.99. The Syrah will be $31.99, and the Napa Valley Cabernet will be $41.99, which are, Casey, those are pretty good prices, right?
Those are pretty good
prices.
Yeah,
yeah, those are pretty good prices. Yeah. Hey, man, I set you up there. So, and I'll remind people about this again, and then if anybody has any issues with ordering anything, I'm gonna put my I'll put my email address in here right now, and you can shoot me an email just if there are any ordering issues. Sometimes we might sell out of something on the website. No problem. Just shoot me an email. I'll make sure I get that to you. There's the Napa Valley Cabernet that Casey has. We've got a relatively limited amount of that left. There's just shy of 5 cases of this vintage left. If we do run out, I can get you the following vintage, which will be 2018 at the same price. Yep, and I'll write that in here right now. If you have... Perfect. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to have Casey is the, eponymous Casey Stringer of Stringer Cellars, and he's the owner and winemaker. And I'm going to have him go through a little bit of his bio and kind of the history of the winery itself. But I want everybody to, well, dude, you talk about the Sauvignon Blanc just a little bit, because we kind of discussed this ad nauseum, and you've got an opinion about what to do. And I'll say, folks, if you think the wine is too cold, just kind of take it into your hands and this is called palming it, man. You just take it in your hands and warm it up like that. Yeah.
Yeah, because before I get into anything about the winery, this wine definitely performs better at closer to cellar temperature. It is a unique take on Sauvignon Blanc. So it's just taste it, and then we'll come back to it here in a second, but it definitely performs a little better when it's warmer. So anyhow, I am Casey Stringer Cellars, and thanks Nate and Ray's for setting this up. This is pretty fun to do because, as Nate mentioned earlier, I'm a native and have done a big portion of my wine shopping at Ray's. So it's
Thanks.
fun to come full circle.
Yeah, it's kind of wild. Yeah, I've worked here for 5 years, and I actually met you, I think probably in the fall of 2014 at another retailer's tasting, and it was a Burgundy tasting. And I was like,
Yeah.
man, this guy's really engaged. And it turns out because you make wine. Yeah. So duh, of course, right? Yeah.
So we now make, depending on the year, 2,000, 2,500 cases of wine a year, which is really tiny, but it's certainly big enough to keep me busy. I make wine from Napa Valley, some Sonoma wines, some Mendocino wines, and some Santa Barbara wines. We'll taste a Santa Barbara one here today, which is where I started my winemaking career, was in Santa Barbara. I was going to college there for photography and got a job at a winery, then sort of never stopped. Did stop doing photography though. And that, so from Santa Barbara, I was moved up to Napa and worked at Robert Sinskey Vineyards, which is actually a Pinot Noir house in sort of right in Yountville. And then from there, moved to Oregon and worked at Archery Summit, some more Pinot. And then back from Oregon back to Santa Barbara. Then at that point, I had a whole ton of, practical on the job, winemaking, but I really needed to go to school for some of the more, some winemaking theory, a little more of the chemistry. And I had the opportunity to go to school in New Zealand. And so I moved there for 2 years and worked, again, with more Pinot Noir in New Zealand, down in Central Otago. Then also a lot of Syrah up in Napier, which is in Hawke's Bay in the North Island.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then back to Santa Barbara at a winery called Honada, which is a very well-known winery. And
we sell a bunch of the Honada stuff here, and it's
good wine.
Famously, it's owned by the folks who also own Screaming Eagle. Yeah.
Screaming Eagle's sister. And then let's see. Then from there, things get sort of unusual. Where I went back to Milwaukee to go to Summerfest and see my family, and met a girl, and we hit it off. And then I went back to Santa Barbara. I was at Honada, and we did the long distance thing for a while. And she was finishing up at Alverno, and she had 1 year left. So I thought, I'll move back to Milwaukee for a year. And I did. And 1 year turned into that 6. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But in the meantime, I was still, very involved in the sort of wine scene. I was at all the tastings, which is probably where I was met you guys.
Yep.
And had some friends. I've actually bought some Syrah and some Syrah fruit in Santa Barbara from actually a vineyard we're going to taste here in a second, Harrison Clark Vineyard. And I had it shipped back to Milwaukee and made some Syrah in my dad's garage, but made it in a very sort of high-end way. And then also next year did some Howell Mountain Cab that same way. And then in 2015, I thought maybe I'll start a winery in Wisconsin using high-end California fruit. And so we did. We built this winery and turned a room into a real winery, and made wine there for a year, and quickly realized that was not the best business decision. Not only is it wildly expensive to get grapes from California to Wisconsin quickly and in the right temperature. And I mean, it's difficult, to say the least, and expensive. And so, and it also created a sort of a difficult marketing, where you want to be you're trying to market yourself as, high-end Wisconsin winery, but you're not trying to be Wisconsin winery because you don't want to be in with some of the, lower end stuff, but you're certainly not a Napa winery. So it was just a very difficult world to be in. And so we quickly realized that wasn't going to work. So we moved the operation to California in 2016. We were started making wine at a winery called Madrigal in Calistoga in Napa Valley.
Oh, yep, I totally know them. I didn't realize that's where it all started. Yeah,
that's where I started it there, and then have then moved to Hyde Vineyard down in Carneros in Napa, and now we currently make our Bordeaux varietals at a place in Sonoma, and our non-Bordeaux varietals in Sonoma, and our Bordeaux varietals are up on Atlas Peak on a winery, sort of way up in the mountains above the valley. So that's,
hey man, you know what? Be sure to plug your where you can taste, because you're kind of in a cooperative tasting spot.
I have two. If anyone's out here, I'd love to host you. I have two tasting opportunities at this sort of co-op in Windsor, which is in the heart of the Russian River Valley. So if people are traveling in Sonoma, they can come see me, or the winery on Atlas Peak in Napa, which it's way up there and it's cool. It's got this amazing view of the valley, and it's definitely off the limo and tour bus path of Highway 29. It's cool.
So folks, if you're doing that, I can get you in touch with Casey. It's pretty easy, and you're contactable through your website too, aren't you?
For sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So let's talk.
Let's get some wine in people's mouths.
All right. So Nate has put together a PowerPoint, and so if you see me looking down on my phone, that is what I'm looking at. I'm just going along with it.
So I kind of I'm on the
I'm engaged, I'm not texting.
Yeah,
so.
I'm telling everybody what order we're tasting these things in. We're gonna do the Sauvignon Blanc first, the Syrah, and then the Cabernet. If you can have everything poured out in individual glasses in front of you. I realize how casual these affairs all are. Man, y'all don't have any questions yet? Really? All right. Okay. Yeah, we got a bunch of people watching. All right.
So we'll start out with this Sauvignon Blanc. So I have two labels. There's the Stringer Cellars label, which is sort of a higher end stuff, and Metal Bender, which has been it's very popular sort of by the glass option at restaurants all over the place. Anyhow, so this is a Sauvignon Blanc from the Metal Bender line. Years ago, I just made a Metal Bender Red, and it had a little bit, sort of different packaging, and it again did well by the glass and stacks at wine shops. And so I was asked to if I'd ever consider doing a white wine in the Metal Bender range, because at that time I was really only doing single vineyard Chardonnays, which didn't fit the price point for. So I was not making Sauvignon Blanc at the time, and so I thought, let's do it. In full disclosure, Sauvignon Blanc is not my favorite grape variety. I find that a lot of them are just a little too simple, and just not much to them, and they can go good with food, they can be refreshing, but whatever. It's just personally not my favorite variety of wine to drink.
So already someone wants to know where the metal bender name comes from.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So my family has a manufacturing business in West Bend, and they bend metal, literally. They make, components, metal components for John Deere, Harley Davidson, Caterpillar, people like that. And so it's a homage to the family business. We're metal benders. So that's where that one comes from. So back to the wine. So I made a few different vintages of this, and I was buying some fruit from Lake County, which is the county due north of Napa, and there's been horrible fire up there seemingly every year. And so it was pretty risky to continue buying Lake County fruit. And so in 2019, I found a vineyard called Kick Ranch in Sonoma, which is actually technically in the Fountain Grove AVA. But for this one, I just labeled as Sonoma County. It is there's a lot of winemaking on this.
Dude, you should feel free to wave your freak flag, because you've been really like self-deprecating about the wine, but to me this is a unique and really like beautiful wine in a lot of ways, and like it shows off you put a lot into it.
I put a whole ton into it. So here's the thing. So,
and wait, hey dude, before we even go there, look at somebody already said loving the Sauvignon Blanc, especially buttery / creamy notes and less acidic than others. There you go.
All right.
There you go.
There's the bullseye. Yep.
Yeah.
So so when you crush Sauvignon Blanc and you put it in a press, you get the juice, you put it in a stainless tank, you ferment it, cool temperature, and then basically move it to a different tank and then bottle it. It's super clean and crisp and, again, sort of uninteresting. I didn't want to do that. So I one thing I did first was I crushed the grapes before putting them in the press. And what that does is it gets a lot of contact with the skins while the press is being loaded, while it's sitting there. It really increases that. And so you get a whole lot of sort of these like phenolic, sort of vegetal or green notes that you otherwise would not, and can make for some more complex wine. So that's the one thing I did sort of different than the average, than sort of normal, I would say. Two, I transferred roughly a third of the juice to French oak barrels. One was new, and there's a few neutral, and it was completely barrel fermented with native yeast. And that wine actually did go through mallow. I just let it go completely.
Yeah, let's have a little bit of a conversation about that, because I think a lot of, most folks out there, you and I are privileged enough to like, wow, we want to like have like Sauvignon Blanc and the breadth and depth of it and experience from all over the world. And you worked in New Zealand, and most consumers out there now in the last 5-10 years, really their gateway drug for Sauvignon Blanc is New Zealand. And that's like there's a real formula there that you're explaining it, and I'm just paraphrasing you, sorry. You're completely deviating from what like most, the commodity level Sauvignon Blanc is made in this, like, we pick, we get things so they're ripe enough just so we can pick it. We bring it in. We usually use a commercial yeast strain, and then we ferment it. It's all done. It's fermented in stainless steel. It sits there for a few weeks at a relatively low fermentation.
Yep.
Right. And then we rack it off and basically bottle it in a few months. Yeah.
You're not even talking a few months. It's like a matter of weeks, honestly. It's like they move it. Because the longer it sits around, the more things unusual things that can pick up. And so the goal is to get it to move through. And so it's just like, and so it tastes really good out of a fridge at a bar.
Yeah,
That's
when it's like 48 degrees, it's like a 40-degree wine, like almost frozen.
Yeah.
This, you did exactly the opposite with this. You didn't do any of that, man, and that's what's kind of fun.
But so there's we got into like a lot of the winemaking on it, why it's a little different. The other thing is the clones that I chose to use. So I always describe clones like I use an analogy of dogs, like a Labrador Retriever. So Sauvignon Blanc is the Labrador, but there is a chocolate, a black lab, a yellow lab. There are different versions of Sauvignon Blanc, and they have different attributes. This is mostly clone 317, which is a French clone, which is very soft. Anyways, before all that, everything we talked about, it's a softer, more tropical fruit flavor clone. And then I also had some about 15% Muscat clone Sauvignon Blanc, which Muscat clone is really, really soft, where it stops really, even being sort of tropical. It turns into kind of like melony, like cantaloupe, cucumber.
And it can even have like it literally has a floral. It's really floral. It's nice.
And I know I've read some things that some people are even saying that Muscat clone Sauvignon Blanc shouldn't even be Sauvignon. They shouldn't even be under the Sauvignon Blanc. It's actually a different varietal. I don't know. I'm not going to either here nor there, but it's that different. So in short, this is a softer, more tropical. I even get sort of cucumber, kaffir, lime notes.
That's a good one.
Yeah, and so that's the wine,
dude. And here's where your feet get held to the fire a little bit, and like Chris out here is asking. Here's the big one that something you and I have to talk about all the time. Do you want to explain what malolactic fermentation is?
Yes.
Yeah, and I only laugh because like Casey and I have to talk about this all the time, and I think it's something that's tantamount and really important, especially in red wines, but it's something that happens in white wines that kind of the gatekeepers, the folks that make and sell wine, have to talk about a lot, and I think it's crazy confusing to the average consumer. So if you want to demystify that, yep.
So so there's a few different kinds of acid in a wine. There's tartaric acid, there's folic acid, citric acid, and something called malic acid. There's actually a high amount of malic acid. And naturally, as wine ages, there's a bacteria that eats malic acid and converts it to lactic acid. And lactic is a much softer acid, and malic acid is very sort of crisp and sharp. And the way to sort of describe it, so a Granny Smith apple is extremely high in malic acid.
Yep.
Real sort of like biting, crisp.
Yep.
And lactic acid, which is lactose milk, it's the acid that's in milk and cheese, which is creamy and soft. And to add, so that's one reason why the wine tastes different when it goes through malolactic fermentation, so secondary fermentation. Another reason why it changes it is because there's a compound called diacetyl. And diacetyl is the sort of what's the
when you smell buttered popcorn, what you're smelling is diacetyl.
Yeah, so diacetyl is what they add to margarine to make it taste like butter. It's like it's butter flavoring.
Yeah, and
exactly.
Diacetyl is a byproduct of malolactic
fermentation. Yes, byproduct is the word I was looking for. Yes.
So when a lot of times when people are like, this Chardonnay tastes buttery, really what's going on is you're experiencing the diacetyl.
So happens is if you just leave wine in a barrel, it will naturally go through malolactic fermentation, which sometimes I choose to do that. Sometimes I choose to inoculate the barrels with a specific bacteria to make it go through quicker, or sometimes I'll choose to block it completely because I want to retain that sort of crisp, malic, Granny Smith apple acid. So this one, I blocked the mallow on all of the tank fermented portion of it, but let the barrels go through themselves.
So it's a combination.
So one of the things about it is it's much safer to let your wine go through mallow, because if there's malic acid left in it and you bottle it, it can spontaneously start going through malolactic fermentation in the bottle, and then the wine gets really cloudy and tastes off, and it's a flawed wine then at that point. So I would say 99.99% of red wines all go through mallow. And I'd say most sort of commercial grocery store Sauvignon Blancs do not go through it because they're going for that sort of higher acid. And so I hope that explained it. I think so.
No, I think that was pretty good. Hey, any other questions for Casey about this wine kind of in particular? Feel free to, type them out. I'm really interested, and like when we talk about this, like, so many people, their introduction to Sauvignon Blanc is New Zealand nowadays. And this is kind of just the opposite, but like if folks are ever interested, this is more, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but this is somewhat more of a homage to what's going on. Like if you were to buy white wine from Bordeaux, a lot of those wines are blends of Sauvignon Blanc and a grape called Semillon. And white Bordeaux that tastes just like this is more in like the $50, $60, $100 range. That's what's kind of crazy about this as a wine. Like you did all the things that would normally make a Sauvignon Blanc be really, really, really expensive and super complex, but you're making just 300 cases of it and you're selling it like at the price like a more medium tiered New Zealand thing would be.
Yep.
Yeah.
I actually do have. I did save a few of the barrel fermented ones. I actually didn't blend them in here, and I am. It's been aging for what now? Over a year.
Yeah, because it's 2019. Yeah.
Barrel. So I'm going to bottle it in June. So there's going to be a little bit of
like a reserve. So the question was, Chris here is like, if you don't like Sauvignon Blanc, what made you choose to make some?
Because,
but don't you think "don't like" is like a strong word? It's just like
don't like is definitely a strong word. It's not my one of the reasons why I'm in this business is to make wine that I like. And I love Chardonnay, and so I was making a few Chardonnays at the time, and I'm also in this business it's a business, and I mean, could I have made a Albarino or a Chenin or something? Which on the surface, like do better, but I'm also in the metal bender has been popular at restaurants, so I thought, let's do Sauvignon Blanc. So that's really why.
But at the same time, the thing I like about this, and that from like a food pairing perspective, is like once you get the barrel character and a little bit of mallow, then this works a lot better with like kind of Wisconsin-y staple things like smoked fish. Like you can do this with like a smoked whitefish, where like I feel like really acidic Sauvignon Blanc is kind of and you could do this with like, to me this would pair great with like risotto or like a paella or scallops. You can do it with more heartier seafood dishes too.
Exactly, it can hold up to some fat, some salt and fat. Whereas a lot of the really acidic ones, it just is it likes spice, and it doesn't really need that. So cool. Yeah, I mean, anything else? I mean, that kind of answered it for you, Chris. I
I'm gonna keep going. I'll show you guys a couple. These are two. This is the vineyard site that this.
Yeah, so it's a vineyard called it's called Kick Ranch. It is sort of in the just outside the town of Santa Rosa, on the hills to the east. It was actually right in where all the fires in 2017 really tore through that area. But it's a cooler site. I mean, they also on that same vineyard have a lot of really great Syrah planted there, and they have some Cabernet that doesn't get ripe. And, but yeah, it's a good site.
I'll go to the next one, which is it looks like it's just a row of this.
Yeah, and those are just shots of. There's nothing super specific. It's just some pretty vineyard pictures.
Casey was a photographer, obviously, at one point. These are pretty good, man. I like, you got some composition going on there, dog.
Yeah, so those are done with the field camera, and then the Syrah ones are coming next to our iPhone shots. So you can tell the difference.
Yeah, so we'll move into the Syrah.
Okay. So I was self-deprecating on the Sauvignon Blanc. I'm not going to be on this one. I love this wine. I think this is pretty killer.
Dude, because I'll do this. I'll make it so I do the sales guy stuff, right? So you don't have to be the sales guy. You can just be the humble winemaker guy. I'm thinking you only made at max 6 barrels of this wine, probably 5.
5. Well, I made more, but I
once you racked it all off and did everything in it. Yeah, it was.
No, not only that, I also have that metal bender line of wines, and so I blended some of the Syrah.
Oh, sure. Guys,
so
there's 100. Casey made 125 cases of this wine, which is nothing. It's crazy, dude. It's so not a lot of wine.
No.
Yeah.
So I alluded to, not alluded to, I said it very clearly. I worked in Santa Barbara for years, and I love Santa Barbara wines. And Ballard Canyon is a super special little AVA.
Man,
right in the middle of.
Hindsight's 2020. I'm usually super into the maps, and I didn't do the maps, but nonetheless.
Yeah. So Ballard Canyon is a relatively new little AVA, so right in the middle of the Santa Ynez AVA, which is in the Santa Barbara County AVA. And it is pretty much dedicated to Rhone varietals and Syrah in particular. It's got to be at least 75% planted to Syrah, because it works there. One of the great things I'll back up. Syrah is my favorite grape variety to make and to drink. And so this is one of my favorites to talk about too. So Syrah grows it's one of the cool things about it is it grows well in cool climates and hot climates. And it tastes totally different depending on where it's grown, which is true of all varietals, but it tastes good at both sides of it. Like you can grow Pinot Noir in a really hot place, but it tastes like Robitussin.
Yeah.
You can grow in a cold place and it tastes like, old, tomato leaves. But Syrah, it tastes totally different, but really good, in both hot climates and warm climates. So cool climate being, that's home, sort of the northern Rhone, where it can be very savory and, tannic and tough with this sort of like light red fruit flavors and sort of underripe berries, but can be just delicious. Conversely, it grows really well in, the Barossa Valley in Australia, which is just dang hot. But it's 16% alcohol and it's jammy and there's nothing savory about it, but it's fantastic.
Yeah,
And
it becomes intense but less complex. Is typically
yes,
what
that's
happens.
complex, but
Yeah.
but it's good. I mean, there's
It
like
is. Yeah.
enjoyable, good, and then sort of the same can be true. There's parts of Paso Robles here in California, which in the Central Coast, which is just hot, and it can definitely sort of veer more towards those sort of jammy characteristics. What's cool about Ballard Canyon is it's really neither cool nor hot. It's kind of right in the middle. And so you can get these very, very varietal, cool climate Syrah notes and still get this sort of, I'm not going to go to the jammy point, but like very fruit forward, sort of California sunshine notes as well. And there's not that many places that you can, that works with Syrah. So this is, I think, a pretty sort of textbook good example of what Ballard Canyon can do. It's a single vineyard wine. It's from a vineyard that used to be called Harrison Clark Vineyard, and I played it as Harrison Clark for years before. But in 2018, it switched owners, and they switched the name of the vineyard to like Piazza della Buena Vista. It sounds like it should be like a shopping mall or something. So anyhow, I decided against putting the vineyard name on the label, but it is single vineyard. It was 2/3 of it I destemmed, 1/3 of it I left a whole cluster.
Hey, and back that up a little bit, because I'll add this to kind of also your comment about Ballard Canyon and just Syrah in general. Like to me, what's really beautiful about this right as soon as I poured it, I was like, oh wow, this has the spice, and it has, like, in a positive way, it has it has the spicy stemmy character, and like phenolic things I get from lignin. That's really geeky, but but then there's also the fruit to it, and there's the really the two of them like sit in layers of each other. But do you want to kind of go into a little bit more depth? Like, a lot of times when I talk to folks about like including stems in winemaking, I always like to think about like, well, before the night, even well into the 19th century, all wine had stems. Nobody had the technology to destem grapes. You follow me?
Yeah.
So like,
absolutely.
I always
the machine wasn't invented to efficiently do it. I mean,
yeah. So I always think of like wines that include stems is like the way wine was always, And do you want to just elaborate on that choice and like why people do it with Syrah or more like how whole cluster is more of a trend with, and I don't want to say the trend, but more of a decision people make in the vineyard, and as like the initial winemaking process, and not with other varieties so much. I mean, people are doing it more and more with Pinot Noir, but
so there's a few reasons. So the stems can really add a whole bunch of, like, they can add tannin to the wine, and tannin comes from the skins as well. And one of the things that Syrah and Pinot Noir, which I'd say the two most common for stem inclusion are these days, they are grapes that do not have a high. It's a chemical called methoxypyrazine or pyrazines, which is a green flavor, sort of a vegetal.
Yeah.
And the stem can add a whole bunch of sort of green character. And so when you are doing the Cabernet or Cabernet Franc, which has a whole lot of that anyways, you can really kind of go over the top with it, and it can be very just sort of green and unpleasant. So a little bit of sort of herbal addition to Syrah or Pinot is not that big a deal. Two, again, Pinot and more so than Syrah has this thinner skin, so sometimes it could use a little tannic boost for aging potential. And with Syrah, Syrah is really cool because people can really accept sort of like wildness to it. It can be sort of tough and feral and bloody and so
I love the word feral too, and it tends to kind of express itself as almost having like an iron character sometimes.
Yeah.
But the fruit still comes through on it, you know.
Yeah. So it's kind of an acceptable one to sort of add some wildness to it. Whereas we'll talk about Napa Cab here in a second. You know, it just doesn't lend itself as well to experimentation. And so, but I did it because sort of a nod to those cooler climate northern Rhones. I like them to be a little wild. I like it. So that's why I added a portion of it. Granted, it's just a third. And I actually also have done some 100% whole cluster, and it can definitely be a little much. It can make for some difficult wines.
Those wines tend to be more reductive then, don't they?
Yes.
Yeah. Like meaning, and by reductive, I mean they need more oxygen. And you know, Casey's note, even the tasting note, he's like, hey, you know, decant this, or you know, decanting it or aging this, there'll be, you know, it'll be rewarded. Now that you've worked, what is this, your 6th or 7th vintage with this vineyard?
I actually worked with this one when it was Honada.
Oh wow! Holy shit! Okay. Yeah.
Honada used to get fruit from this vineyard when their estate vineyards were still coming online, and I actually took over the.
So this went into Todos and Phoenix.
La Sangre.
Okay.
I think it was. Yeah. So it went into that, and then it just happened to be kind of just dovetailed perfectly out of the contract. I was looking for fruit, and so it worked perfectly. So I've been working this for a really long time. I'm familiar with this vineyard. And so this is all 100% Estrella clone, which is a French clone. I'd say it's the most widely planted clone in the Central Coast for sure. I don't know.
And yes, Ted, this would be very good with lamb.
Yes.
Yeah.
I do I do wine dinners fairly often, and this is always one where it's like when I talk to the chefs and we kind of come up with pairing. Like, there's nothing really to talk about. If you are gonna make sort of lamb lollipop, like
works. Wow, this is crazy. Oh, there is a question like yada yada yada. I've heard Ballard Canyon has a big organic push. Are these grapes organic? Just curious.
They are not certified organic, but they're certainly sustainable. I would say that most of the high-end vineyards that I work with, and certainly people sort of like me work with, are at the very least sustainable, because it's such a quality versus quantity balance in grape growing, where so there's no reason to add so much stuff and so much fertilizers and chemicals when you're going for sort of lesser quantity to make higher quality. So specifically, I know that it's not certified, but it's sustainable.
Wow. So. Man, this is starting to really. It's great because it's. I also really, really, really love Syrah too, and I really love cool climate Syrah. And I think what personally, and I try to make this not about me and super subjective, but like it is one of those wines like the next sip changes, like that's just so beautiful to me, and like it really does. And these are great. I always feel like I'm gonna get almost more bang for my buck from Syrah, and I know how I have a really good idea how kind of cooler climate Syrahs will age, and like when these things get to be like 10 or 15 years old, I enjoy them more than Cabernet based wines. almost always. And I consistently feel like the return on my investment's better. Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit? I know we kind of, before we started, I was like, hey, this is a thing to talk about, Casey, but
well, sure. So well, I guess one thing is about sort of aging in Syrah. And so I was, mentioned earlier the Paso Robles, like some of these these big fruity wines that they can be so good, on release in 2 or 3 years into release. And then obviously as wines age, the fruit characteristics sort of drop and you get these sort of secondary or the tertiary characteristics, that's what aging wine is. And you kind of miss the point sometimes with those wines. They shouldn't be aged, some of these really big fruity ones, because that's not what they're about. They're about the fruit. And
I talk about this all the time. It's like, if you like the primary flavors of the wine and you really love the fruit of the wine, drink it now. Don't drink it. Yeah, drink it. Yep.
I am a strong, and then so cooler climate wines, it was never really about the fruit to begin with. So they inherently kind of age more gracefully because of that. It wasn't because the fruit drops out, but that's okay because it's always about the sort of the herbs and iron and garrigue or whatever. So so that's not exactly what you asked, but that is the economics of it is there's just no doubt. I mean, just to start off with, there's Syrah, the grapes themselves are less expensive. So that's a somewhere to start. And so you can sort of so the higher quality grapes are just that much less expensive to start with. You're not necessarily using a whole ton of new oak barrels on it. And new oak barrels are really, expensive. And so those are your two sort of main, well, there's a few of them, but those are two of the sort of the main cogs or whatever, the cost of goods that sort of drive, wine price.
Wine costs. Yeah, for sure. Like tell everybody, so you bought, I'm not familiar with the Cooper. Oh yeah, actually I'm familiar with the Cooper. So it's Marcel Cadet.
So I love Marcel Cadet barrels for Syrah. They are a Cooper right outside of Beaune, so they're a Burgundy. Primarily, they're used in Burgundy. They are relatively low impact barrels. They are the staves, which is the wood slats that make up a barrel, are they're steam bent or water bent, where basically they heat up the stave with steam and are able to sort of bend the stave into the barrel shape that way, which a lot of the it's more traditional for the Bordeaux barrels to use heat from fire to bend it, and that impacts the flavor more. So they're low impact barrels.
Yeah, there's probably less caramelized sugars in them because of that. Yeah.
Exactly. I don't think I really answered your question on the economics of it.
No, well, I mean, just for instance, what did you, just to give some people some idea. So you bought 3 new barrels or 4 new barrels to make this. How much did each of those barrels cost, if you don't mind?
That's very euro dependent, but I use all French barrels. So they're about $1,000 a piece. Yeah.
Fuck,
about
dude.
That, and I mean, one of the things about it is, it's no different than anything in cooking. It's like you can buy, some thyme that has been sitting on a
right
shelf in the back for 3 years, and it was 92 cents.
Yeah.
But it tastes like 92 cent thyme.
Yeah.
And you can buy cheap barrels, and you know what? They just stick out. They're really strong flavored, and they never integrate into the wine, no matter how long you age it. It just always sticks out. And so good barrels, it's like this. You know they're there, but you feel it. You don't taste it. Kind of.
So I'd even suggest to folks out there, because we could talk about this wine forever. Like, this is going to be amazing tomorrow. Like, if you don't drink, yeah, I mean, this is going to be incredible tomorrow. I would even say, and Casey, I mean, you deal with this every day. This would be the kind of thing like I would take home, and I would then decant this tomorrow, too. I would open it up, and then I would taste it. I'd be like, oh wow, I really want to give this even more air. And like I would if I didn't drink all this, I would then, even tomorrow, if I was gonna drink more, I would decant it and have it over.
Or just, I would do that, or just, don't put a cork in it. Leave it on the counter with no cork in it.
For sure. Yeah, that's fun. I do that with Syrah and Nebbiolo all the time, because they're reductive. I mean, we could talk about that for days and days and days. So good, dude. I mean, like,
just another little thing on this. And so one of the things that you do with wine that's often when it's aged in barrel is called racking, where after 3 or 4 months you'll rack it, which is basically moving the liquid from a barrel into another barrel or into another vessel and then back into the barrel. And what that does, it aerates it a little bit, softens tannins a little bit, and you remove sort of all the sediment, or it's called lees, that falls to the bottom of the barrel. So with Cabernet, that's common. I do it, pretty much every 4 months, right on the dot. This Syrah was not racked. It was only racked once. It was racked right before bottling, and that's another reason why it can be a little sort of tighter, which is again on purpose, because I like having that sort of lees contact. And this is bottled unfiltered, unfined. This was the opposite of the Sauvignon Blanc. There's not much wine at all on this.
Yeah. Oh man, impeccable, dude. Hey, any other questions about this wine particular for Casey? I really enjoy, Casey, how you're a champion of the AVA. Like, you're like, hey man, I love Ballard Canyon. Like, it's in a broad. You've had this conversation with me a couple times, and I didn't. And at the time, I didn't realize you'd worked at Honada, because you're a really humble guy, man. I knew that the first day I met you. You're like. So I'm gonna wave your flag, because this wine is really good. It's like really good, and I love it because it's got all the intense. It's intense and complex at the same time. It's got all like the intensity of fruit and like depth, and it's opaque and full bodied, but at the same time there's like all these savory things happening too, and it's got the rotodone, the spicy peppery thing happening, the meaty thing, and floral, all across the board. Really, really cool stuff. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Nate.
Oh man, yeah. But I, like you, really like Ballard Canyon, and I like you really like Syrah.
Yeah, it's just it's a really cool spot for Syrah. They nailed it. I mean, the grape industry is becoming pretty. California grape industry is becoming fairly mature. So I would say for the most part, the right varieties are planted in the right spots at this point.
So
years ago, they were like, one of the reasons why Chardonnay gets such a bad name is because in the 70s and early 80s, they were planting Chardonnay in Calistoga right next to Cabernet, because that's what the winery wanted to make. And they just planted it no matter what.
Yep.
And there's been enough years now, and much trials, and that they can see that that most of the right things are planted in the right spots now. So.
Rob Mangan says it's everything I want in a red wine. Yeah. And then Casey says, or Chris Combs says, this is delicious. Bravo, Casey. Like,
Thank
you. Yeah. Oh, and here's a picture of the vineyard site, actually.
Yeah. So these are the iPhone shots.
Dude, these look pretty good, man. It's super sandy. It's like
it's really sandy.
Yeah, it's really sandy. Yeah, wow, it's totally sandy. And is it is some of it diatomaceous, or I'll get. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. That's more. I mean, it's not so much. That's more Santa Rita Hills, where it's more.
Because it's closer to the ocean.
Pretty much. Yeah. It's pretty much just sand.
Yeah, and this, I mean, for folks out there, one of the beauties of sand in a vineyard site, especially when it's on a slope, is, we think of sand being close to water or related to water, but sand actually doesn't retain water. So the grapes become more concentrated when they're in sandier soils.
Mm-hmm.
In a nutshell.
There's just not much water available to them, and they need to search deeper for it. And
like the super shitty, gnarly things that are horrible for vines, that are bad for them, can't live in sand. You can't have aphids and phylloxera and all kinds of really nematodes and things like that are bad for vines. Don't live in sand. So sand's actually great, especially in warmer areas for like fuller bodied red wines, because it and things that are drought like Syrah doesn't need a ton of water. In a nutshell, yeah. So like this, like water, it doesn't retain a lot of water. It's on a slope. Like the gnarly bad bugs can't live in it. It's beautiful for that. People want to yada 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 about like this soil makes the wine taste this way or that way, but I don't know. I mean, like objectively, really the composition of the soil and how it interacts with the environment lends more to the flavor than like what the actual soil's made from.
And what the farmer has to do to the vine because it's in that soil.
Yep.
Because you have to farm things differently depending on where the soil that it's grown in. And so that inherently changes some things too. So
and this kind of goes back to Chris's question of like, oh, doesn't Ballard Canyon have a lot of organic vineyards? Well, yeah, because in a relatively arid place with sandy soil, all the shit that's bad for vines just doesn't live there because it's sand.
I talked to some growers who are up in like Mendocino County or something, who have to deal with rain and fog and not that fog they have down here too, but they have to deal with a lot more things.
Oh yeah.
And they laugh about Napa. They're like, so these guys get paid way more than we do to do nothing. Because I mean, if whatever God made the perfect place on earth to grow a grapevine, it's Oakville, California. You don't have to do anything.
You just put it in the ground.
Just put it in the ground.
But in honesty, Ballard Canyon isn't that far off from it either.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's really not.
So
they have a few more. They have a little bit more humidity, but that's about.
So then a guy named Jeff Hunt here says, will this soften a bit with age? Absolutely. Yeah, yes. Absolutely. Dude, I think this, I mean, I'll go out on a limb, like literally, like if you guys, like I have a 10-year-old kid, I have a 5-year-old, right? If I bought this wine, I would wholeheartedly feel like with no, in my basement without even putting it, as long as I kept it about 60 degrees and out of the sunlight, I wholeheartedly feel like I could drink this wine with my daughter on her 21st birthday 15 years from now. I mean, it's got
there's enough acid in it, and it's sure.
Yeah, and it's got wood tannin and grape tannin, and like it's got all of the above. Like the shit's like it's solid. Yeah, and it will soften out. Like the tannin will fall off on this one. That's the first thing that I think will start really, really kind of mellowing out over time. It'll lose some of its primary fruit, and this will become less tannic, especially like 5 years down the road. Yeah. Sorry, I'm getting really. I'm almost foaming at the mouth. So.
I knew you would like, and that's why I wanted to include this.
We were
first talking about this thing.
Oh boy.
I thought because this is actually I haven't even released this wine yet. So.
Oh yeah. That is the truth. Like I had to go through all this shit where the distributor had to go buy it. Like they had to go get it from some like third location in West Bend where your family has it or something to get it.
Yeah,
so this is like the.
But it is.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
But it is officially released now. So yes, as of now, it's officially.
Yeah, as of now, this is like the release. Yeah. How does the climate compare to the Northern Rhone? Well, I mean, there's not really sand in the Northern Rhone either. Yeah. This is warmer and drier than the Northern Rhone.
Yes.
In a nutshell.
There's no doubt that the Northern Rhone is fully in the cool climate, and this is arguably not. I mean, it's right in between.
It's kind of in the transition of cool to warm. I'd call it like a warm climate as opposed to a hot one. Also, you have to remember, like, the Northern Rhone is at like 46 degrees north, or 45 degrees north, right? It's like it'd be like if we drew a line from Milwaukee, the Northern Rhone is like 200 miles north of where we are.
Yeah.
On the globe. So because
the 45th parallel goes through Door County.
Yep.
So if that's the indicator.
And the Northern Rhone's at like more like 46. So like these guys, it's like dark by 9 o'clock in the summer.
Yeah.
In the Northern Rhone, there's that much like their growing season is kind of similar to this because they have more sunlight. Here it's warmer, if that makes sense. Follow me? Like photosynthesis happens a different way in these two places.
Yeah, and they have the really rocky soil that retains heat in the Northern Rhone, so there's some of that. But as a very general rule, it's straight up, it's colder there.
Yeah, just in general, it's colder. The wines are more acidic. They have like a harder tannin to them. So Jim Nelson is saying, "Hey, this is amazing. So, what will we expect the taste to change? How will we expect the taste to change if we leave it open overnight?" I think this wine will have way more fruit than tomorrow.
It will also have it'll have a bigger mid palate.
Yep.
It's just gonna flesh out.
Yeah, it'll flesh out. And my perception too, and this is just a nutshell kind of thing, like especially Syrah seems to like broaden in the middle a lot when you give it air, and like it'll turn up, it'll be less angular and more round is what typically happens. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, this is just such a young wine.
Yeah.
And
these the spice characters will become more delineated from the fruit. They'll kind of they should be more, they should each be more pronounced from each other, but man, this is rocking right now, especially as I opened this at like an hour and a half ago, and I've been sitting here really I'm like vigorously spinning this in the glass tube for a long time. Okay, any other questions, guys? Because we're getting, I'm, really getting, really getting crazy about this. And then we're gonna move on to the 2017 cab. Man, wow, Casey, bravo, man, holy smokes.
So after all of that Syrah talk, I make mostly Cabernet. Mostly. I laugh because I talk about how I'd love to start love to start a brand that was just single vineyard Syrah. But I have a family and children that enjoy eating food, so I need to make Cabernet. So I do make I'd say probably half of my production is Cabernet. Maybe not half, but a bunch of it is Cabernet. And I get fruit from all over the valley. I currently get stuff from Calistoga, Howell Mountain, Stagecoach, which is kind of the northern part of it, the Pritchard Hill part of Stagecoach. Some stuff from Atlas Peak, Oak Knoll, Oakville, Rutherford, pretty much all over the place. The only ones I don't get are St. Helena, and I don't get any Diamond Mountain or Spring Mountain. But so this is a 2017, which was a warm year. It was it was also a fire year, so I'm sure we'll delve way into that. But it was a difficult vintage, not necessarily for sort of winemaking. It was difficult for sort of external situations. But I think this, I'm proud of this wine. I think it turned out pretty well. I'm small enough where I pretty much know what every single barrel I make tastes like. And
oh wow! Yeah,
I am able to pretty early on in the process kind of earmark wines for where I think they're going to go. I do make a few single vineyard Cabernets. Then I make the Napa Valley, which we're tasting now, which is sort of the middle tier. And then I also have the red blend, Metal Bender, which we're not tasting today, which is the lower tier. So, so I oftentimes will, just for round numbers, if I bring in, 5 tons of fruit from a vineyard, I'll break it up into, two fermentation lots, 2.5 ton ones, or maybe 2 ton and 1 ton, and I'll try either native fermentation or some commercial yeast, or different fermentation temperatures, or more pump overs, or more punch downs, a whole different thing, different ways to add complexity into the wine. And not only that, but I work with these vineyards for year after year. So if I stumble across some technique that works really, really well, I will repeat it again and maybe more of it. So so this is kind of my like I said, the middle tier. It has fruit in it from a vineyard called Palissa, which is right in the heart of Oakville. It is, if anyone's been out there, it's behind the Oakville Grocery, across from Opus One and Tokeline.
Yep.
It's an old school valley floor vineyard. It is dry farmed, so there's no irrigation. And it's old Clone 7, and Clone 7 is a real classic clone. It's all more about like sort of cedar and sour cherry, and so that's where that. So I smell, when I taste this wine, I get some of that, and that's where that's from. I also used Stagecoach Vineyard, which is a very famous vineyard up in the eastern mountains of the valley, and that is Clone 337. And Clone 337 is it's a French clone, but I'd say it's certainly the most new planted clone in Napa Valley, because it's very it's what modern Napa Cab is Clone 337. It's flashy, and it's doesn't really have any cedar or any herbal characteristics at all, or greenness, and so that's what I get at Stagecoach. And then there's also some Oak Knoll, which is one of the more southern AVAs in the valley, which is oftentimes has a little sort of higher acid component to it, because it's just cooler. I get a minty character out of it a little bit too. I get a super minty character, and which is interesting so this is 75% new oak, and I admit that for the first few years, I thought it was a little heavy on the oak, and I haven't tasted this for a few months, and the oak is really sort of integrated now, and I'm starting to get that. Yeah, the mintiness was sort of like hiding behind the oak earlier on. Tastes like Napa Cabernet.
Sure does.
And excuse me. And so another thing that I do, which is not unusual but not common, just because of how extremely laborious it is I will ferment a portion of my Cabernet in 60-gallon French oak barrels.
So I'm showing the picture of that right now, which is really a kind of crazy technique.
So it is a totally crazy technique, and people laugh at me about it because it's so crazy. But so I'm trying to bring it up right now. So
this is an incredibly giant pain in the ass for you to do.
So instead of destemming everything, and I destem and crush all my Cabernet, because Cabernet has plenty of tannin by itself. It doesn't really need any additional stem tannin, and as I alluded to before, it can have a sort of herbaceousness naturally to it, and I don't really want to add to that with any stem inclusion. So there's really no reason to, for the style that I'm making, there's no reason to include it. So instead of going into a stainless steel fermentation tank, I will take a barrel, basically take it apart, take the head off, fill it with 400 pounds of destemmed fruit, which is one of the pictures there is shows that process. Then you put the barrel back together, and,
That's this.
And you ferment in the barrel. But one of the problems that creates is that as you need to pump over or punch down the cap, which is the cap is the skins during a fermentation, and the skins are where all the flavor is. I sort of equate it to like a tea bag, where you kind of want to keep the tea in contact with the juice, and that's where you pick up all the flavors and the colors and the tannins, certainly. So you have to sort of mix the tank several times a day. But the problem is, it's in a barrel, you really have no access to the fermentation. So what they've invented are these rollers, where there's one of the pictures on the PowerPoint is the barrel.
Here it is. Yep, this I'm showing everybody. Yeah.
And so several times a day, you literally roll the barrel and to mix the pumice or the cap.
Yeah, the juice. Yeah, the juice just gets intermersed with the skins.
Yeah, and so, but so in saying that, also because it's not a tank and because it's an enclosed, vessel, there's nowhere for this stuff to go. So pretty much you're almost in constant contact with the wine, and so it creates a extremely
volatile.
And it's an extracted wine.
Yeah.
When you out barrels, and so it's really dark and extracted. But the other thing about it is it's really, really soft, because the reason why you're aging wine in oak barrels to begin with is sort of to soften tannins. So it allows oxygen pickup into the wine during fermentation, and the sort of the chemical compounds of the oak are interacting with the tannins. So you're softening, you're micro-oxygenated and softening it at the same time. So it is a very useful blending component. I have not ever bottled a 100% barrel fermented wine. It's just too much, but it's a blending component. And so a portion of the stagecoach in this wine was barrel fermented.
Wow, it's beautiful, man. Yeah. This has got to be kind of a crazy. So then each barrel really becomes its completely own environment, and you have you have some pretty drastically different products. Then I'm thinking.
Yeah, I mean each barrel in essence becomes its own fermentation lot.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that's the same thing. Is I'll use different yeast. Here's another thing: is for barrel fermentation, I do use commercial yeast, because I want that to finish.
Yeah. I mean, that's a little geeky thing to get into, because if you did native yeast, you'd just be like, this could get stuck. I'd have to inoculate it. I mean, there's a million.
And there's a million different reasons why. And when you're in a tank, you have sort of heating and cooling capabilities, and you can really sort of start it again. With a barrel, I mean, you really can't do much. So I do use commercial yeast for the barrel fermentation part.
I'll go back, and I want to show. I'm going to the picture of. Well, there's a little bit of the Oakville vineyard, but then I'm showing people the Stagecoach Vineyard Rocks picture.
Yeah, let me bring it up here. So Stagecoach Vineyard, I would say, behind the Beckstoffer Vineyards, or certainly Tokaline, is probably the other sort of like main marketable name vineyard in Napa. It was previously owned by the Krupp brothers.
Family. Yep.
They were New Jersey eye doctor, I believe, and whatever. He came to Napa and he bought this large piece of land northeast of the city of Napa, which was just sort of desolate and godforsaken. There was no vineyards or anything.
Yeah, it was like a no man's land that was in the Vaca Mountains, but north of Stagsley.
Yeah, and it's just sort of, and he bought it for cheap, and everyone sort of laughed at him and was like, "What are you going to do with that? I mean, it's not suitable for. You can't graze cattle on it. You can't grow grapes on it. You don't want to live up there. There's no electricity." And just sort of like, all right, whatever. And I don't know what he did in the eye business, but he did something right. And so he brought in, giant bulldozers and dynamite, and he carved out this vineyard basically out of pure rock. And so that picture is one of the many piles of, and that doesn't really do justice. That's, that pile of rock is probably, 60 feet tall.
Jesus
there's just rocks
Christ. Wow.
everywhere. It's a absolutely incredible place.
Nobody's ever gonna, with water rights and everything else going on in Napa, nobody's ever gonna be able to do this again.
You could never do
Like
this
it's because he did this in the late 80s. Yeah, no.
Yeah, like the green speckled toad, I'm sure is native to there.
Yeah,
too.
I mean, we laugh and joke about it, but seriously, like, dude, this is like, no way, this is done.
It's an unbelievable undertaking. And, so, talking about Oakville earlier, I'd say that's sort of dead right in the middle of Napa Valley. So the southern part of the valley is much cooler. It actually hits San Pablo Bay, which is a bay of San Francisco Bay. So it's much more marine influenced. And as you go north to the tip of the valley, which is Calistoga, it becomes much hotter. In Cabernet is even arguably too hot for a lot of Cabernet, where it's a lot of Zinfandel and Petit Syrah up there. Anyhow, so Oakville is right in the middle, and it kind of is the perfect spot where it gets sort of this marine influence, but it's definitely still hot enough, and it works for Cabernet. This vineyard is basically due east of Oakville if you just keep on going up the mountain.
Yep.
And so you kind of get all of those sort of like the perfect sort of climatic area, but with the rockiness of the soil. So you get these, these tiny little, like they feel like little like pellets, the berries. There's just thick skins. And so it's kind of got this sort of Oakville-ness, but also the mountain character. It's a pretty special spot for Cabernet.
Wow.
And I also do make a single vineyard stagecoach,
which we do sell it. We sell at the store. Yeah, we have the Stagecoach Vineyard cab at the store. Yep. Wow, so cool. Wow, so cool. This is really showing nice right now too.
Yeah,
and
one other little thing. So I normally this blend is a little bit unusual for me. It's 93% Cab, 7% Petit Syrah. In the sort of the Bordeaux world, Petit Syrah is obviously not a Bordeaux.
Yeah.
Not one of the traditional blending grapes for Cabernet. And so normally I use Petit Verdot that I get from also from Stagecoach, but from farther south in the vineyard. And in 2017, I alluded to was a fire year, and so their fire was burning right around Stagecoach, and my Petit Verdot was sort of right at the edge of the vineyard, and a helicopter missed and dropped flame retardant right on my Petit Verdot block. So,
funny, not funny, man.
Yeah. And so I was able to, I'm a proponent of blending something into Cabernet. Cabernet to me has a hollow mid palate and by itself, and I like to, sort of fatten it up a little bit. And normally I use Petit Verdot. I didn't have it, and so that year I made Petit Syrah, and so I had a little bit of that from Calistoga, and so I used some of that. And it's not traditionally set on labels, but there's a lot of Petite Syrah planted in Napa Valley, so it's commonly actually blended.
Oh yeah, completely.
It's not unusual to. It's more unusual to say it than it is to actually do it.
Wow. Any questions about this wine in particular from folks? I actually, one thing that's interesting to me about this vintage, and I found, and for whatever reason, the 18 wines are just like for lack of a better term, seem to be like more bombastic than 17. I actually really enjoy a lot of 17 wines nowadays.
Yeah, 17 was. It was a weird year that it got really, really hot, like 115 degrees, 117 degrees hot. And so
Jesus, you had that's insane.
Yeah. So you had I mean, normally when you're trying to pick grapes, you're watching the acid and you're watching the sugar content. And usually as sugar rises, acid drops. And usually you try to like the optimum time to pick is when the sort of like their curves or the lines cross, where the sugar and acid is perfect balance. And that didn't really happen in 17. So 17, it got so hot that the sugars sort of like blasted off and rose when the acid was really lagging. So it kind of made for an unbalanced grape. And you kind of had to pick what were you going to pick on? Were you going to pick on sugar or were you going to pick on acid? And the people who picked on sugar probably did better in 17 because they picked earlier and so they didn't have to deal with the fires as much.
Yep.
And I mean, 17 was just like, there was like a little more winemaking involved. I mean, there's some like 2018. I mean, I don't want to diminish what I do, but you don't have to do anything. It was just like,
perfect.
You picked it and it was perfect. And it was just like, get out of its way and bottle it. Where in 17, there are some things you can, there's, some fining and filtering and some things you can do to remove some acid. And so, yeah, it was a good year, not a great year. It required a little more of the winery.
So there's a question here and it's about, is Casey a fisherman or is the fish stringer on the label just to play on the name?
Oh, yes, I'm a fisherman, and my dad and brothers are avid fishermen. And so when we were coming up with the label, a stringer of fish, which is what it's called when you have a sort of like a string through the gills of a fish you caught, it's called a stringer. So it's kind of an easy one. So yeah.
CC. Wunderbar. The more this breeds, the more complex it gets. Yeah, for sure. This is yeah, I mean, and this is something, another wine, like this has got longevity to it, man, for sure.
Oh yeah, these are babies.
Yeah.
I'm such a small winery that I don't have the luxury at this, or not, I'm small and young being, I don't really have the luxury of holding back my vintages until they're sort of at their optimum drinking. I mean, I need to, it's a business. I need to get them out there and sell wine.
Yeah, right.
So I mean, I personally wish that I was releasing my 2017s right now.
Instead of 18?
But
yeah.
Instead of my 18. But that's something that, that's my goal is to get there.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I'm in a situation where I have to do it, so I'm selling some wine.
Yeah.
But yes, this will certainly be more complex next year than it is right now.
Sure, fair.
For high-end Cabernet, I would be, if this was on its this is on its upward trajectory still, not downward. So yes, you're totally right. It's getting more complex. And this could certainly use a decanting, and will, the same as we talked about the Syrah, will, in my opinion, taste better tomorrow than it does today.
Yeah, so this is $41.99 tonight.
That's crazy cheap.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, so we're doing this for $41.99 tonight. The Syrah was $31.99 and the Sauvignon Blanc's $18.99. Yeah. Like I said, I don't know, if people want to buy the wines, please go on our website, put in a pickup date of Wednesday or later. That just in case I sell out or something, I can work this out and make sure everybody gets everything. That's the Wednesday caveat there. It's just more. I've got a lot of there's 50 some people watching this or something now, and it gives me the ability to make sure everybody gets their wine on time. Then, and then this cab actually there's less than 50 bottles left now of the 17 cab. Like I said, if we do sell it out, I can get people to 18. I'm sure Casey's really excited about the 18.
Is it very much in the same style. I mean, I made it the same way, same vineyards, except there is the addition of some Howell fruit in the 18. So, and 18 being, like I mentioned before, sort of like a dream vintage. It was, but there was more fruit, which kind of led to a little bit sort of thinner skin. So it's
less tannic,
slightly more less tannic. I'd say slightly more approachable now.
Do you? Oh, sorry, I don't want to. You do you.
Oh no, I don't even really. I had nothing really to say.
I was just gonna say. I mean, I think I'm curious what you think. When I taste a lot of 17 wines now, I'm thinking like these are kind of going to be pretty good for the long haul, especially if people did more pick on the more acid side of things. Yeah.
Well, they're going to be good for the long haul.
Yeah.
Sure, it's definitely a more structured vintage.
Yeah.
18 is certainly a great vintage. I mean, it's a better vintage than 7, but they certainly are. If they're more approachable now.
How did you feel, like, interestingly, and you probably felt exactly the same way about Syrah, too, and we're really, because the Ballard Canyon Syrah we drank today was 18. And you felt the same way about the vintage in Santa Barbara as you did in Napa?
Not as much. There wasn't it was hot down there. The bigger problem for me with the 17 Syrah was that was in the tank at the winery right during the fires.
Oh wow! Okay.
I was simply the National Guard and the police would not let me go to the winery.
Oh wow!
So there was some. So it didn't get as. So some of like the pump overs and punch downs I was unable to do. So there was it was a little bit less than my. I mean, I think the 18 Syrah is a superior wine to the 17 Syrah. I don't think it's so much vintage wise, but more.
What you got to do. Yeah. So hey folks, it's getting close to 6:30. We can, Casey, as long as you have time, I'm going to open this up for questions if anybody has just kind of general things they want to ask him. Sorry, I'm getting kind of burpy. Hey Pedro, thanks for the text, man. I'm glad. Yeah, I mean, these are great wines. I'm glad you're digging it. Yeah. And like let me know if anybody wants to email me or doesn't want to do this through the website. You can email me. I put my email address on here. I'll do it again. We can do it that way, or you can order these through the website.
And anyone, like I said before, anyone who travels out here, California has been difficult to access here this last year. But we're certainly on the up and up, and like everywhere else is. But I'm seeing people, daily these days come in for tastings, and the weather is good, so we do some stuff outside, and so love to host you.
Wonderful. Yeah.
And I do make a few different Chardonnays, which I sort of more in the. I'm quite proud of the single vineyard chards that I do, and in some different Syrahs as well. So I do a whole bunch of stuff that we taste.
I think Ray's might have to start carrying just everything. Is probably what's going to have to happen. Yeah. I pretty much get carte blanche around here, guys. But yeah. Any other questions for Casey while we're doing it? This. Oh, okay. Trout. Who is the Trout Slayer? Who's I don't know who's whose YouTube login is Trout Slayer. That's amazing, man. Ted and Andrea, thanks so much. Like, people are really, Casey, just so you know, people are giving you they're singing your praises, my man.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
This is sort of another little side note. So unknown to, I didn't think about it at the time, but these wines have done really well in like Montana and Colorado fishing lodges.
Oh wow, of course, right?
They're like, all things being equal, sure, let's have a fish on our label.
So someone's asking, what do you recommend for California wine tourism? Like, do you have favorite places right currently?
Yeah. I mean, I love Anderson Valley in Mendocino. That's where I go to if I'm going to go taste somewhere else. I love it. It's difficult to get to.
Yeah.
First of all, it's just straight up spectacularly beautiful. I mean, it's the prettiest, as pretty wine country is on earth, and it's a really sort of tough to get to. So there's no, like, you just, like, big buses couldn't even get there if you wanted to. And I love it there. That's, like, without a doubt sort of my favorite place to go.
Wow.
Yeah, it's hard for me to sort of say. I mean, I love, obviously, Napa and Sonoma, but I'm just in it, so I don't know. I just kind of
yeah, fair. Yeah.
So it's not like I'm traveling to it. I mean, sort of some of the West Sonoma Coast stuff is great out there. It's so, and again, it's just so pretty.
Fort Ross, Seaview.
Yeah. Truth be told, I like going out for the. I mean, there was so much good wine around that I like going out for, like, the views and stuff. Sometimes I like the prettiness more than I like the wine at all the places. Let me think. Paso is really fun. The city of Paso Robles is just a great little town square and really good restaurants and good wine.
Yeah, Paso does have a real. It's actually I haven't been there in like 10 almost. Yeah. I went and last time I was there was 2012. But, like, there's a pretty cool food scene, and there's so many wineries there now.
There's tons of good restaurants. They have this area called Tin City, which is, I don't know what it was, but it was like, I think it was like a sort of an old, like, like a mini industrial park where it's basically been taken over by these, like, little sort of funky hipster wineries and breweries and coffee shops and taco trucks. It's awesome. That's another one I really recommend. Yeah, those are the.
What is your speaking of which, this could be the segue. What is your favorite AVA in California for Pinot Noir? That's like a tough one.
Oh,
right.
That is sort of a tough one.
Or do you Sonoma Coast? You say Sonoma Coast. Do you do Pinot?
No.
I thought that question would come up, actually. That's kind of cool.
So I make a rosé of Pinot Noir. I'm actually sitting in a building right now with about 10 or 12 Pinot Noir producers in it, so I can't talk too loudly. But it's not, domestic Pinot Noir is not my favorite grape or favorite variety of wine to drink. And so that's just that. I think there's a lot of guys that do it really well, and I just don't really want to enter into that game, honestly.
Awesome. Well, hey, man, I'm gonna give this because I should
have said Oregon. Really, that's what
like. Here's my overshare. I've got to go to the little boys' room pretty soon here too. I'm gonna give this 2 more minutes. If you guys need it, let me know. If you guys have any more questions, I'm gonna wrap this up at 6:35. Man, Casey, it's been a blast, dude. Thank you so much, man. I'll follow up with you. Yeah.
I do things not like this, but I do like Zoom stuff, and this format's really great.
Oh,
a
thanks.
pleasure.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
thanks. Yeah, I love doing it with the PowerPoint and having two people is actually pretty fun. Yeah. Yeah. So thank you so much, man. I'm gonna shut it down in just a minute. If nothing else pops up. Yeah, the wines were great. Man, I mean, like championing Syrah is important, and like I love your style of Napa Cab, and a lot of people have had the same thing to say. So
Good, thank you.
Wonderful, man.
I guess one other, just real quick on the wine. You'll notice
Oh, no
that
problem.
the Napa Cabernet has a little bit of sort of it's higher acid than a lot of
Yep.
them. I'm a major. Through all my Cabernets, every vintage, I pick more on acid than I do.
Yeah.
And there's always acid in my wines. I do not like flabby red wine. So.
Yeah. No, thank you for that too. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is just definitely a little more in the classic style, which I really really appreciate too. And they're great wines to age. I mean, then the wines can age because and that's and then you can drink them everywhere on the spectrum. And it's hard to hold on to them for too long, almost. Well, hey man, thank you so much. I'll follow up with you early next week and tell you how the rest of this went. And thanks everybody out there so much. Like I said, if you want to order the wines, please do so through Ray's website. There's one person who texted me. I'll follow up with you once I shut this down and see how you want to do that. We dig acid. Thanks much, Nate and Casey. Another great virtual tasting. Okay, we're gonna sign up. I'm gonna sign off. Yeah. Wonderful. Take care. Yep.
All right.
Bye-bye, Casey.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.